returning favorite and fellow SecX family member Stephanie is calling in. Pronouns are she, her. And I think Stephanie is going to give us some further insight into what I brought up earlier, which, to be fair, I only brought up because she told me about it. I didn't know. So I'm not going to lie and say that I'm, super woke and whatnot. Stephanie actually told me about this, and I was like, oh, my God, that's awesome. That's definitely going to be the thing that I talk about. But for once, let's hear an actual female athlete talk about trans females in sports. What a novel idea. Stephanie, you're on the line.
Hey, how are you, Nate?
I'm doing well. I'm glad that you called in because I'm always interested to hear your perspective on this stuff. The report that came out, or what was it? A framework. I believe they called it a framework. Stephanie? Uh-oh.
Well, it's still the topic we're talking about, so while we're waiting, Nate, what more do you have about?
Yeah. There she is.
There, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Stephanie, we can hear you. Yes. Go.
Oh, good. I guess I was going over to read actually read a little bit from it, but I was pleasantly surprised. It was released on Tuesday, and it is a very strong statement from the IOC that trans people belong in sport. They ought to be able to compete in sport. The IOC itself doesn't control the policies of its member governing bodies of sport. For example, World Sailing is a governing body for my sport. But it basically is directing each one of its member organizations to take steps to assure that trans people fulfill the obligations of the IOC Charter, which says sport is a human right, and it calls for if there's going to be any exclusion from any particular competition, it has to be based on peer-reviewed evidence that a trans athlete has a particular advantage. And it's astonishing and quite nice to see, especially in light of the fact that in 23 American states, there is legislation either pending or passed that would exclude specifically trans girls from competing as girls and women. It's just a delightful thing. So I wonder if you all have any thoughts on trans folk in sport generally, or any questions about it.
As a trans sportswoman myself, who is someone who has very little care for her own health and safety on a Sunday afternoon when I'm playing in goal on a soccer field, I hear exactly what you're saying, and I have some personal knowledge of this report because my best friend, who is also a goalkeeper on the soccer field, is an IOC-funded researcher and is currently doing research into this very issue. And the number one takeaway from this is that, from what I can see in the report, is that sport is having to evolve as society evolves around it, and it cannot stay in the 1896 state that it was when it was first developed by the IOC at the original first Athens Olympics. And it makes me a very happy woman to know that what I do on a Sunday afternoon isn't going to be ripped away from me, and that what I do on a Sunday afternoon as a trans woman who has a footballing family, I'm not going to have that taken away from me. Even if FIFA were to turn around and say, well, you can't play soccer anymore, because FIFA are the governing body of association football. The English FA, just known as the FA, have said that I can compete. They have robust procedures in place for me to be able to compete. And it is lovely to see that the IOC has understood that trans people and those with differences in sexual development actually exist. And it is absolutely wonderful to be validated in that way and to see that I am recognized as an athlete. I am recognized as someone who gets onto the pitch and plays football, and I'm no different to the 10 other people on my team and the 11 people that I'm competing against. And it is just wonderful. And hopefully it will not all fall apart and this will all be some false hope. And hopefully this will be the beginning of the acceptance of particularly trans women in sport, but also some recognition that trans men actually exist and play sport, because there was an absurdity that in Texas, a trans man was required to compete in a wrestling competition against females who were not trans in any way and had been on testosterone treatment and was required to compete in the female category because that's what the law in Texas said. And it's crazy.
Which is like the opposite of what the anti-trans folks would have you believe, right? It's like, oh, these men, they just want to claim that they feel anyway, they want to claim that they feel like a woman so that they can go in and dominate women's sports. Like, no, that's not the case. Like you were saying, this guy just, he probably wanted to compete against other men, not women.
Yeah.
I don't know, Stephanie, did you read any of the comments to the Twitter announcement? Please tell me you didn't, because I did, and I was just like,
it was pretty bad.
It was.
My experience as a female athlete. I transitioned 23 years ago, and the first couple of years, people had a hard time wrapping their head around it. But I found that I have always been welcomed on the various crews that I've competed with. I am actually a U.S. sailing race officer. I've always worked wonderfully with race committees all around the country. Ran a World Sailing Level 3 match racing competition down in Oakwood, Long Island, a couple of weekends ago with a great team. I've always been welcomed by my competitors, by race officials, and I find that all of the panic is not about the people playing. It's not amongst the people that are playing the games, but it's among people who have a notional view of what sports is like and what trans people are like. And I think that all of the government, most of the governing bodies around the world, and especially with this release from the IOC, have dealt with this problem for years and have worked out a way of handling the diversity of gender identities and sex variations over time, and it's getting better. It's great.
Because I say you mentioned,
regardless of comments in some Twitter feed.
Yeah, Twitter garbage bigots notwithstanding, things are getting better. Phoebe, what did you want to say?
As I say, what this report does do is it does make two governing bodies stand out as outliers, one of them being World Rugby and one of them being Sport England, because they now look as if they are the relics. They now look as if they are the dinosaurs. And I hope that this will move the likes of Ross Tucker away from their very intransigent positions towards trans people competing in certain sports and recognize that trans people are not a threat to the structure of the sports that they are trying to exclude trans people from. But following on just from the mention on the Twitter comments. I had a look at the Twitter comments, and this probably tells something about how bad I have found the Twitter trans conversation. I didn't think the comments were actually as bad as they could have been. As someone who comes from what is colloquially known as Turf Island, I didn't think those comments were actually as bad as they could have been, and I was expecting and bracing for a lot worse in those comments.
Well, you're certainly being more charitable than I would be. So, kudos to you for being the good Jedi and not the evil Jedi. But Puck,
This is entirely like for me.
that?
The entire topic is I have a lot to learn still, and I have a lot of people to talk to, and keep on figuring stuff like this out. And I'm glad that I do have the resources available to me and places I can people I can talk to, like Phoebe over here, who has never been shy from conversation about anything that I've had to ask about. So I don't have. I haven't looked at this new release from the IOC, so I don't feel like I have a good, meaningful opinion to throw into the hat here, other than I definitely have some reading to do.
And Phoebe, you have another guest for your show.
I do.
Just saying. I don't know if you two have met, but yeah, we recently had Stephanie on SecX with Arden, and then Arden had Stephanie on Transatlantic last week, and you killed it, by the way. You killed it, girl. It was a great show.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was really good. So I would actually be interested to hear your story on Phoebe's channel, for sure.
Anytime.
Maybe.
Thank you very much for calling, Stephanie. I'm glad I got a chance to talk to you. I see you on Discord a lot, but this is my first time really getting to talk to you. So, hi.
All right. Cool. Have a great night.
Stephanie, I will be in touch.
Thank you.